Okay, to install the Stage 1 Unleashed Solid Kit for the Elite Alpha Trooper, you're going to need your one trigger catch spring, and the 5 kg mainspring. Also the backplate if you choose to install it. It's not 100% necessary. You'll need a Phillips head screwdriver and optionally a flathead screwdriver. The flathead will help you split the shell in areas that it sticks, because you don't want to force the shell open because it might cause your internals to shoot out and you might lose the dart tooth or the accessory tooth. So for the sake of time, I've already removed all the screws, and in the Elite Alpha Trooper there are 3 screw sizes. Longer screws for the main body, the lower part of the pump grip and the back cap, shorter screws up around the accessory rail, and 2 very short screws that go right up here at the front of the blaster. So just try to put those back where you found them. If you try to put long screws up here on the accessory rail or up in the front, it'll poke through the shell to their side. So let's get started. First things first, you want to split your shell. And the Alpha Trooper likes to stick up at the front and right around this area. And try not to force it. And we're stuck. Okay, this one really stuck a lot up at the front. So you take this half the shell and just set it aside. And you're going to want to remove your trigger catch and spring. In this case, I will be replacing this prototype spring with our new spring. And the stock trigger catch spring, trigger catch can be set aside. At this point, you can remove one of the locks, which I generally do not use. And to do that, you can remove the trigger connector bar. Remove the trigger connector bar and get at this lock right here. This is your half prime lock, and it's not really necessary. If you're modding your blaster, you don't need this lock. This comes out as one unit. And that can be discarded. At this point, you can go ahead and remove the magazine lock if you want, but I'm going to leave it in. So trigger connector bar goes back. Make sure this spring is properly seated, and make sure the lip of this bar is hooked onto the bolt sled, or you will not be able to prime your blaster once you put it back together. It will go back together if this bar is not seated correctly, so take extra care. It's pretty much the one thing that can go wrong with reassembling the Alpha Trooper. And I'm not going to remove the air restrictor, because the Elite blasters, it's not as beneficial as removing them on the older N-Strike blasters. So now take your Kit 1 trigger catch, lift the plunger tube and drop it into place, and put the spring on the trigger catch. We have 2 little hooks on the spring post, which will prevent your spring from flying off if you seat it down. See? It's stuck on there. Go ahead and drop that into place. It should move up and down. If you push down on it and try to move it, you'll see it catches on the shell, so just don't push down when you're testing it, testing for fit. And take the new spring. Just loosely set it in there. You don't have to push it all the way in and brace it on the shell just yet. You can leave the last coil sitting out at this point. And let's see, make sure everything looks right. You want your plunger in its groove. You want these 2 posts in their groove, so that can move. Double check your trigger connector and your trigger. Make sure it can move freely. All right, so at this point, let's drop the other half of the shell. Oh, one more thing. This spring here, be extra careful that it is properly seated. If it is halfway seated and the coils are pinched, you're going to have a very hard time loading darts, and your blaster will start to jam. It's not a very obvious problem, because if the spring is unseated and you look down the barrel, you'll still see the dart tooth lock into place. It just won't have enough strength to overcome loading a dart. Alright, so top half of the shell, make sure everything's lined up. Should just drop right down. Alpha Troopers are fairly easy to reassemble. There you go. Make sure your accessory tooth isn't in the way. And at this point, make sure your magazine release actually is set. So make sure your shell is together here, because the two halves of the magazine release have to interlock. Okay, so we can put the screws in. I'm going to pause and put the screws back in. Alright guys, I have all of the main body screws in, and I have the 2 screws for the back cap right here. And let's do the back cap. This is an optional part, but if you want to install it, remember it only goes in one way. This isn't a square, it's a trapezoid, and if you try to force this in, it won't go down all the way. It will be very, very difficult to get out. So as you can see, when installed correctly, when oriented correctly, it just drops right in, and then you just push it. It should sit all the way at the bottom up against these screw holes. And then you take the spring, which is not fully seated, and just press it through the blaster. And this is what you want to avoid. You don't want to leave any spring coils poking out, or you won't be able to prime. So just push those into place like that. So there's no coils interfering with the plunger's travel. You can do some like half primes. There should be no resistance. If you try to prime and like for this first centimeter or so you feel a lot of resistance, something isn't right. You're gonna have to take your blaster apart. Maybe the plunger isn't seated correctly. But 9 times out of 10, the spring is going to be causing your priming issues. So from here, back cap, 2 slits face down, and then the last 2 screws. Let's see, I don't want to strip the threads. And with all of these blaster screws, guys, when you're screwing them back in, if you feel any resistance, back them out, go back in. If you feel resistance again, back them out, go back in. The threads have already been cut into the plastic, and by forcing the screws to cut new threads over and over and over again, eventually you'll end up with a screw you cannot tighten. Alright, they don't need to be super tight, just snug them down, and looks like we're good to go. Okay, primed. This is the one dry fire. Alright, thanks for watching. And for more technical information and support, check us out on Facebook and our new forums. Forums are back up. Great group of guys and girls, and a lot of technically inclined Nerfers out there. So if you have any questions about our products, feel free to ask on the forums or shoot us an email. Thanks for watching, and take it easy.